welcome everybody. We are so very happy that you are with us this evening. Sorry for the delay. Some technical issues as usually when you are doing stuff on Zoom. Yeah, I'm Niklas from Goethe. I just wanted to say welcome to everybody and thank our wonderful guests and our moderator for tonight. We have Wajukuu here, we have the Nest Collective here, we have Nyambura here moderating. Thank you so much. And also I wanted to give a very quick introduction to Documenta. Just a couple of minutes, so because I felt like, okay, we are announced this as a post-Documenta talk, and I think some people might not even know what Documenta is. So I just wanted to quickly introduce that. Documenta is a pretty big exhibition in Germany that happens every 5 years. It's sort of a biennale, but more rare. It happens very seldomly in the city of Kassel in Germany. It was founded in the 1950s. To be precise, in 1955, when the first edition of the exhibition took place. And since then, there have been many more editions of this, and this year we had the 15th edition of this festival. Documenta has a sort of ambition of documenting what's going on in contemporary art and exhibiting what is relevant, what is big in contemporary art. And obviously in that, through its history, it has very different approaches and has a very changing idea of what global art is, what contemporary art is. This edition was actually the first one that had a major focus on artists from the global south and was sort of more or less putting them center stage and not focusing on what's going on in Germany or the US or wherever else, but really taking global artists from the global south and putting them as the major exhibition makers. And it was curated by an Indonesian artist collective, and they decided to also invite lots of other collectives. So they also changed a bit what we think of as art. A lot of other documenters usually have giant sculptures, paintings, installations. And this time around, obviously that was there as well, but also a more sort of collective approach to art making, a sort of social practice, activist approach to art making. That was very much inspired by inviting different artists that are not white male European artists, but collectives, people working with communities in the global south. And two of those collectives were from Kenya, the Nest Collective and Wajukuu. And today we want to hear what their stories are from going there, the stories that they took there, and yeah, what their sort of takeaways from engaging with all these artists from across the world. And yeah, very happy to have you. Very excited to hear what you have to share with us tonight. Thank you so much. And at this moment, I will hand it over to our wonderful moderator, Nyambura. Thank you for hosting us tonight. That's it from me.
Thank you so much for that, Niklas. And I'll start by introducing the two collectives we have here today. First, I'll introduce Njoki Ngumi, who's part of the Next Collective, and my two friends, yes, I'm not afraid to say it, Ngoge Wawero and Shabu Mwangi from Wajukuu, who I've known for going on a decade now. So hello, friends, and Njoki, also a friend. So we are all among friends here today. And because we're among friends, I think sometimes it's easy to fall into this space of the familiar. But some of us have not been to Kassel. I'd even wager to say most of us do not quite know what work you took to Kassel, even though some of us might have seen the work while you were in Nairobi. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what work you took to Documenta 15. And I'll start with you, Njoki.
Sorry, we have given you the right to unmute. Sorry for the error.
Hi, I think you're also going to have to allow me to turn on my video. Hashtag censorship. Oh my God. Yay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Thursday evening. We don't, I mean, at least for myself, and I'm honored to represent the Nest Collective here. We don't take your time and your interest for granted, and we're really hoping to be able to have a great conversation here. Just to say, my colleague Noel was supposed to be here for this call, but he got caught up. He was kind of in transit from somewhere, and so he wasn't able to join the call. So please accept his apologies. As regards our work, I don't even know where to start, because should I start by talking about the work? Should I start by talking about the process that led to what we eventually decided the work would be? But then there's a lot to consider there. But maybe as a brief intro to the work that we did, we made an installation called Return to Sender, which was built with bales of secondhand clothes. Here at home, they're called mitumba. Mitumba is the Swahili word for bale. And we built kind of like a room out of these bales of secondhand clothes, which we all sourced in Castle with the help of our incredible production support team. And then inside the room that we created out of these bales, we did a video where we were kind of talking about the context of secondhand clothing trade and the ways in which the ways it's being done now mean that the global South, countries in the global South, specifically Kenya, which is our lived experience, but this is a common experience across the continent and into the rest of the majority world. In many ways, we become a dumping site and a landfill for the things that the global North doesn't want anymore, especially as regards textiles. Outside the installation, we also kind of had shreds and bits of plastic waste, because that's another element of the waste that makes its way across the seas to become parts of huge landfills here at home. And we were really interested in kind of unpacking the power dynamics involved in this. We were also really happy to be able to install it in the middle of a very beautiful and pristine kind of public park that's very well kept. The grass is all like so, and the trees are tamed, and there's pretty statues and, nice buildings. And then you have this shenanigan that's built of bales. Even our original idea was going to be a lot more, disruptive visually than it actually was, because it wasn't beautiful to look at. Because the point was for people who don't usually have to deal with the repercussions of their textile waste and what it means to be able to have to deal with it in places that should be public places for people to enjoy. And that for us, because so much of that public space is taken away via the landfills, there's many ways in which we don't have kind of the green and recreational spaces for our own publics that exist in the global North, because they're not reckoning with the actual repercussions of their waste. I think maybe the last thing I'll say is that as regards the content of the video, we were really glad to be able to speak with several people who have a lot of knowledge in different ways of this sector. We spoke to 2 journalists who've done some very deep work, kind of unpacking the idea of textile waste, the landfills that exist in the majority world, which don't exist in the minority world. Again, followed by people whose work is to lobby for policy change in this context. And there we discovered many horrifying facts, including that every time African countries have tried to bring an end to the idea of secondhand clothing trade. There's been chaos in some of these governments in the global north, because they need these value chains of transfer to continue. Again, we also spoke to people who are very knowledgeable about the secondhand clothing trades and the ways in which it's been able to provide decent livelihoods for so many, and that all of these things then make it a very, very complex conversation. But then also people were deeply aware that because of the existence of the secondhand trade and because its prices are uncompetitive, it then becomes very difficult for affordable new clothing that pays workers decently to also rise in the same kind of economic context. So there was a lot of things that we were trying to unpack as regards this, and we were able to do it in this video that we were then screening inside of the installation. And thankfully, we were able to have both English and German subtitles so that people would be able to kind of engage with the subject matter much more closely. So that's what I'll say about our work as of now, as a brief introduction.
Oh, you actually started answering a question I'm going to ask all of you later. So
I'm so
thank
sorry.
you, Joki. No, it's always a good thing because I'm actually going to roll it into the question I am asking Wajukuu, which was, what went into the artwork. I saw some of the work at Circle Art Gallery before you went off to Documenta, so I feel like I had leakage. But yeah, it would be great for you to talk about what went into that work, and especially considering it also showed here maybe what changes you made going to Castle, if any. Yeah.
So thanks, Nyambura. Thanks, everyone. My name's Gugi Waweru, and I'm here with
Shabu Mwangi.
Yeah. So what we did in Documenta is it's a very long process. I'll say 2 years from the time we started meeting with curators, with the artistic team, coming up with ideas and ways to execute. And for us, we started, it's like what we usually do, work with community. So, but this time we expanded, we decided to bring in other people. So we started with art workshops where we could invite artists, discuss, make art. And this was to prepare us to engage with the Casa community. And we did the festival. We showed our community. We let our community see what we will take to Casa, because we were not going to Casa as Wajukuu, but as a community. And we did the exhibition at Sako. And with this was all about with experimenting with new materials, not only what we are used of. We kind of stepped out of our comfort zone, and we had to learn things and do new things.
And also the pre-event which we did here in Nairobi before going to Castle was also for us to share with our society here, like also to engage our society, our community, art community. And in our plan, we kind of divided the Documenta plan into two. The half of it was happening here in Kenya, and the other half was to happen as an exhibition there in Castle. So part of community outreach programs, we did them here in Wajukuu. We were hosting a workshop where we would invite artists from other community and just have sharing hours with them, just to be there for each other, because also, as you can remember, it was COVID time, so it was hard also for artists here in Kenya. And we needed space where we can share and then find a way where we can support each other. And I think Documenta for us played that major role.
I really like what you said about community being part of what you are bringing to the work. I think both of your works brought, certain notions of community. The Nest work sort of highlights the way these Western, countries are shipping off their waste in ways that, in one way or another, deeply affects the communities that have to then encounter those clothes, and not just clothes, but a bunch of other things. Well, I love that I can hear the kids in the background at Wajukuu, because it's not just a concept. Sometimes it's one thing to be like, we are building a community. It's another thing to almost, touch the community. So that's really exciting to think of all the ways in which we can interpret community, just judging off of your two answers. And for that reason, we are going to segue into the question Njoki started answering, and maybe Googs, you could take it first while Njoki is like, which question? And then the question had to do with what your experience was like when you got to Castle. The reason I'm saying Njoki sort of touched on this was because she talked about how there was that contradiction, being in this place that does not really like mesh perfectly with the thing you're showing. You know what I'm saying? Like sort of like disturbing the environment in this way. And so meditate upon it for a little bit, Njoki. Over to you, Team Wajukuu, so that you can tell us what your experience was like.
For us, we were lucky, I will say, or we had planned it in a big time, because we went early to Castle in 2021, the last year. We had traveled there, and we had the chance to visit different sites, and we visited Documentar, and we decided to make this our stage, or where we will work. And Documentar is one of the places that is identified with the Documenta. So it's like a center stage. And when we found this space, we did not know, we did not think of it. We had no ideas. It only matched what we are going to do. And we found a team there who helped us with the technicals, way of approaching things, because in Germany there are very many strict rules on building, because we were constructing a building like what we have here. Actually, you can see the inside of our studio, and this is what we build in Castle. So we had a good team. We brought in some materials from Nairobi, and we incorporated that. People, Castle community thought we were very bold or courageous to transform the walls of Documentar. It was something they never seen and something they never thought of. And for us, I think for everyone, we had positive feedback from Castle about our work, because we wanted to bring our home experience to Castle, and this is what we did.
Yeah, also primarily Wajukuu artists, most of them are specialized in painting. And in Castle, we kind of tried a new material, because to be honest, in the beginning of our approach, we didn't really know what to exhibit there. When we heard we will be part of a Documenta, first we had a meeting within Wajukuu, and then we say, oh, this is a big stage. How do we approach it? And what are we gonna share there? So one thing is and is always our journey where we want our voice to be heard. We want some change to happen in our systems also, not only like a global system, but also a Kenyan system, and how we have a lot to do. We have a lot to unlearn, you know. And our big area was education. Even the artworks themselves, they are really questioning education and our ways of life from the past to present. You know, like with the Nest, they are really questioning the present of what's happening in global South. And for us, we were like digging from the past and also reflecting towards the future with our installations.
Thank you so much for that. And again, I think there's so much to discuss off of your answer, but I'm going to let Njoki go first, you know, so that I can let the question I so desperately want to ask percolate. Njoki.
Thank you so much. I do want to echo what my colleagues have said. It's very true. Sunny and I, when we were at Documenta, we made it a point to visit the Wajukuu installation. It was stunning, and exactly what she said, it looks exactly like that. And then there were all these really beautiful installations inside, as well as a number of paintings on the side. And then they also had a room where you could watch a video that they'd shot, kind of talking about their work, the ways their work kind of intersects so deeply with the community, how different people's learning journeys, the journeys of the artists themselves, all of these things kind of happening at the same time. Stunning work. It was really beautiful. I think I do want to say we joined the road a little bit later than Wajukuu did. I think about a year later. And we were extremely panicked because we were like, what are we going to do? This is a big deal. Because like after being like, yay, we've been invited, it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And we definitely ran a bunch of different ideas internally. Because like there's some places where you don't necessarily have many chances to make certain kinds of statements for and among certain kinds of audiences. And you don't want to be kind of cavalier about that. You don't want to be light about that, because there's so much that can be said in very specific ways. Again, it was really an honor to be there amongst so many. A lot of people were saying that it was a very different Documenta in the sense that there was a lot of artists from the Global South. So we were also really excited about all these kind of parallel experiences, similar experiences, different experiences that were going to be showcased. And so we were also excited for the learning and just kind of being able to reflect through the eyes of other artists and practitioners. We as regards, and I want to just kind of echo the question that you asked, we were very intentional about the jarring contrast between the very beautiful place that we were going to install in, and actually the installation that we made. In fact, the original installation, as we had foreseen it, was a lot more messy and sprawling. Let me just kind of see if I can share my screen to show some images that we have on our website, and they'll just kind of keep changing. So this is actually quite structural. And like my colleague said, also like having a production team to do support on that side was really crucial. Because like, for instance, for us, since we were building a thing that people were going to enter, we really needed, for instance, support from an engineer to say that, okay, you can't go above a certain number of builds, otherwise it can really go to the dogs. We also kind of talked about what happens if it rains, you know, things like that. We talked about definitely the floor on the inside, because the floor on the inside had, it was not grass, it was kind of differently placed. And so there was definitely all of that going on as well. I think we were really glad to have, and like the thing that we had was, even when you look at these bills, they look very neat, kind of piled on top of each other. And our original thought was something that was much more piled and untidy. The point was supposed to be the untidiness, because like even for us here, if you look at our landfills, they're not neat places, right? There are some of these places that have had actual decades of secondhand clothing, of other kinds of mixed and assorted wastes, just kind of piling on top of each other. Another thing that I didn't mention earlier was that when you walk around our installation, we also had a soundscape playing of the kind of sounds and conversations that go on when these bills are being opened, when the contents of the bills are being sold, people describing what's in the bills, bargaining and things like that. So we really wanted it to have we wanted a more kind of multisensorial experience in this regard. So I think it's really important to note that for us, in a place like this, with this kind of neat grass, we were very happy to be able to come and install there. In fact, like when we were having a conversation with the team and they were kind of suggesting places for us, we definitely knew it needed to be outdoors. We wanted it to be in a place where people can kind of walk in and walk out. But at the same time, we didn't want it to look like it was at home, because that was the point. It wasn't supposed to look like it was at home, because it wasn't. It's an eyesore. And even like the original idea that we had was much more untidy than this one, and probably would have been an engineering nightmare to kind of put together. Beyond also, the issues around things like, so where are they going to install the screen on the inside so that people can kind of sit and watch the video, and more conversations like that. So I just wanted to say that as well. I hope I answered your question, Ambura.
Yes, you did, and you the two of you have addressed something which I would like for you to briefly touch on, which was how you dealt. As I said, you briefly touched on it, so it's not going to necessarily be a long answer. But what was it like working on this scale? But then essentially transferring it to a whole other part of the globe. You know what I'm saying? You both talked about, the technical support you received and so on, but also some of the constraints that came with working in a place with certain rules, certain regulations, working in ways that would make your work sound so that you wouldn't, have all this liability from mitumba falling on somebody's head, for instance. Imagine, this is not what they mean when they say the empire strikes back, and so I'm interested in what it was like working on such a scale across different geographies.
So like we said before, we did an exhibition at SACCO, small scale. We exactly knew what material we will use, and we had to ship other materials, but some we did not ship because of maybe weight and a lot of things. So when we get there, we know from here when you want a recycled material, just walk around and collect. But back there, it's also not very easy to find a recycled material. You have to order, to buy, and a lot of paperwork. So we had a lot. We had also to see what's available there, and it take time. So we had like 2 weeks where we were not working, visiting other sites to look for material, connecting with people who will give us these materials. Yeah.
And also another thing, I think the approach in which, like, for example, Documenta stage, an artist who is exhibiting in Documenta, I think the technical team, they are always prepared to meet people with the same approach. Like, for example, like, let's say I'm very organic when I'm doing art. And I can't preempt my creation by designing something of how I want it to be. It creates itself while I'm creating. And that's how we approached our work. And it was we had the assistant who was assisting us to do things. It reached a point where we started joking like freestyle. Yeah, we do it freestyle. We don't want to use this regulation that you are giving us to approach things. Like you need a permit to go up the ladder. So for us, I think we did it the way we do things here in our locality. And these also, for us, like we don't have the images. Like the entrance to Documenta Hala was a tunnel, and this tunnel they were really concerned about safety, you know. And we started questioning where is the room for art if you question everything that an artist is doing, you know, because they were planning to hire a company to make a tunnel for us. And you know, back here we build even houses one day, and you
20 years.
you're already like in it the next minute. So we said, we know how to build houses. It will not fall. We know how to build it. Just give us that freedom. Don't preempt creation. Let give us a room to create. And I think with time they realize we might look backward, but we have something that is not in their world. And I think that was like a room also for them to have a room to learn from us, not the other way always.
Oh, I feel like we've taken a moment while Jockey is starting to share her screen to be like, yeah, we have the global South has something to say. You know, it almost feels like that scene when Andre 3000 is like, the South has something to say. And I know he meant the American South, but in this case, the global South has something to say. So that's quite interesting to hear.
I've just been here clapping in my house.
Oh, we saw you.
Yeah. I was just like, yeah, actually. I want to maybe touch a little bit with a bit more detail as regards the sourcing of our clothes, because our installation was called Return to Sender, which ideally would mean that we would get secondhand clothes here at home and send them back to Germany, you know. But there's actual real laws against things like that, which then kind of also for us opened up the inquiry about. So there's laws against, you know, us sending certain kinds of things, and also our entire production budget would then also have gone on, you know, import taxes and all sorts of things like that, even if it had gone as artistic material, because you can see how many kind of bales of clothing that we're dealing with. But then we were really reflecting on how for these countries, and even for us on our side, there's no real issues as regards sending some of these bales, because these bales, the way they've been tied, this is exactly how they come to our country, right? But then our borders appear open for any number of reasons, economic, you know, the ways in which people treat, you know, richer countries treat poor countries, all of those. And there's a lot of politics in the conversation as well, which we went into in, you know, the short clip that we recorded. But we ended up having to source these clothes within Germany, within Kassel itself. And so part of our recce was kind of going to see some of these places, understand how they deal with waste, and then really understanding, you know, some of these little details as regards dignity, as regards the ways in which countries expect people to be living. And again, even on our side, because it's very easy to look at our landfills and say, oh, you know, look at the Africans, they don't know how to deal with their waste, until you actually go to the landfill and you see the deep levels of repurposing, sustainable living that are going on there. There are people who have made their entire livelihoods taking out from the landfill the things that are reusable. They're able to clean them, reuse them in ways that, you know, the global north could never. They can't even imagine these levels of commitment, resilience, intention, as regards what using things over again, finding new ways to use things. A lot of us, were raised in homes where you don't wear a t-shirt 4 times and throw it away, which is what is happening in these bales, especially in the places where they're being made. But for us, you wear the thing, either it passes to somebody else who will then take it on another life cycle of wearing, or the t-shirt then becomes something that you can use in the house. So whether it will help with cleaning or whatever, the thing will be used until there's really nothing left for it to happen with it. And then even within that, there's more conversations around how much natural fabric is in a lot of these textiles that are coming our way. The increase in the amount of synthetics then also means that these fabrics are not biodegradable, which then means that on the side of our landfills, things are really going to be haywire, and that even in general, the quality of the clothes that end up coming across the seas our way has gone down radically over the last couple of decades, because again, when they're sorting out the clothes on their side, they keep obviously the best of these things. And then now the worst of them, the ones that they actually do not see their own market wanting to get as thrift or as the performance of an ethical living, are the ones that then come our way, right? So by the time these things are getting our way, we already know we are like receiving bale C, bale D, quality things. And there's a lot of further conversation that can be had there, even about how, even here at home, we are encouraged when we're exporting coffee to export the best coffee, and then we keep the worst one for ourselves. So there's a lot to conversate on, kind of conceptually there within. Maybe to touch on the technical team, just like my colleagues did, for us, because again, we joined the game a little bit later, and there was a lot of tightness as regards who was able to move when. We had to do a lot of our backs and forths online. I think because of having done collective work and knowing that there's a way our work can begin, which will not necessarily be the thing that you end up presenting. There's many backs and forths that you have to have, especially when you're working with other people. And that again, because the spirit of this particular Documenta was about kind of lumbo, collective work, collective engagement, sustainably working with people, which then also involves things like being able to meet, negotiate, come to an agreement. You push where you can, you yield where you can, in ways that are about mutual respect. And I really loved the way Wajukuu kind of described what their process was as regards where they pushed and where they said, no, actually, this, we're not agreeing, it's going to have to be done our way. And also at the same time, I can tell you for a fact that the thing that they had in their heads may not necessarily be the thing that ended up happening. Because again, of having to do these push and pulls, not even about budget, but beyond that, it's about the capacity of your team to execute, how possible it is within the place that you've been given, etc. There was a lot more going on. But again, the teams were extremely supportive, really, really lovely people who would test things. Then they take photos, they take videos. They tell us, okay, so this is what is going on. I know you wanted X and Y and Z, but then the engineer is advising that we do X and Y and Z. And then now we come and have a meeting and we say, okay, we don't like it. Is this a thing that we are going to just have to live with, or and so that process was a really, really important process. And like for us, definitely the production team were really, really lovely in that regard. Maybe to just kind of mention as well that there were other teams that also got in touch. It wasn't just necessarily about producing the work. It was also, how do you situate the work in the media when people come and start asking questions about it. So they had communications teams to help with that, who would tell you that, okay, we've set up this interview with you, we're sending so-and-so your way. They write the emails to introduce you, and then you continue that conversation. So that was also really useful. I think as regards the question you asked about scale, is that also the scale in the number of people that you're working with in order to realize the vision increases radically, and that having had experience doing collective work was useful in many ways, because it enabled us to be able to take in a large number of different opinions, and then also arrive at new places, consider new approaches, and be very humble, really, about what is possible and what is not. While also, again, exactly like what Wajukuu was saying, just kind of push and say, no, can we push for this? Can we really make sure that this is possible, etc.
Thank you both for that. And to go back to the Lumbung concept, which Njoki just mentioned, I'd be really curious to hear, especially from you, Gugs and Shabu, how you really went about, being in conversation with this concept that had a lot to do with sharing resources. That's something you've touched on earlier in this conversation, but maybe just really talk to us about what it meant to be exploring this concept of sharing resources, which was a larger concept of Documenta 15 in the context of your work. And while the two of them are answering that question, I invite the people in the audience to post their questions in the chat box, and I will pose them to the people in the panel. Go for it, guys.
Yeah, the Lumbung concept of sharing and being there like for each other within our small community, Lumbung community. I think we ended up in Documenta because we had already these elements. These element of Lumbung sharing, because before everything, I think the curatorial team, Wanglupa, they did a trip to Kenya, even before they knew they will be the one hosting, curating the Documenta 15. And we stayed in touch with them for quite a long time. And for us, I think it was an additional space to share with others, because it's something we have been doing since we started our collective, sharing with our community, giving back to our society by mentoring young generation, and also trying to see that we have an artist ecosystem where artists support each other. And I think for us, the only thing which really came and really broke our voice a bit was the political aspect of approach from other medias during Documenta, but it didn't really kill our spirit of collectiveness and sharing, which we are still doing. I think that's why we are hosting this Zoom call together, because we are still keeping that Lumbung spirit here in East Africa, Kenya.
Yeah, and from community, Akasa community, or people who visited Documenta, saw our documentary, got to learn how we started and how we are moving on. We were always getting this question: how do you stay together? What made you come together? And for us, we had only one answer. We don't know other ways other than being together. And actually, we were first members of Lumbung before we knew we will participate in Documenta. And because Wajukuu, ever since we started, we shared this value with Lumbung, sharing humor, building an ecosystem, and this is what we've been trying to do ever since we started.
And related to that, because if this is what you've been doing before Documenta, I'm interested in the ways in which you intend to continue this work, or to continue, exploring and excavating these ideas even post Documenta. Either of you can go first.
I think
I'm
I'll go first.
telling you, Njoki. Oh, sorry, Shabu.
Yeah, so,
No, Shabu can go first.
Tell Njoki. Okay.
so for us, I think now we are planning our physical year on because we work annually as a collective, and ideally every year we do a festival in our community. And the reason why we do a community festival, Wajukuu Festival, is to share with our community what we do as artists, because the primary belief of Wajukuu Collective is that whatever we voice out there is what we experience or we see happening within our society and the larger community. And it can't really mean anything if we don't share with the community itself. And this is the spirit we have of always sharing with our community before it's taken out there. Like the example of coffee, the best coffee going outside and we get the low grade. I think it's something we need to change as a society on how we approach things, because we need to have the best for us before we think otherwise. Otherwise, we will always be like a consuming society rather than a society which can also create and be happy with what we create.
Yeah, and also Lumbung is here to stay. Even after Documenta, we are still Lumbung, and we will still go on with Lumbung.
That was really lovely. What you said. I think I wrote it down. We don't know any other way to be apart from being together. That's really beautiful. Yes, there's somebody in the comments. Actually, it's you, Nyambura, who said family eats last, and I think especially as Africans, there's many things we've really internalized around that. The thing where we give the best plates to the guests. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we've learned around being able to do that. I think for us, especially around the time this came, there were many important lessons for us in that regard as well. And so we've really started having more robust conversations internally about what rest looks like, because we've not been a very resting collective in many ways. So like for us, I think also the conversation around collectives, collective care, collective engagement also has to start within the collective, even as it considers artistic practice alongside other artistic practitioners, as well as radiating out as beautifully as the Wajukuu community engagements do. I also want to say, as regards Lumbung, one thing, I mean, there was nothing as overwhelming as the Zoom calls with all the Documenta artists, because my God, like you'd be in a Zoom call with like 500 people, you know, and like there's some screens where like you're seeing there are 10 people in one screen. And then, you know, there are others where different members from different collectives all joined on separate screens because they're in different places. Maybe some of them have already started doing their pre-production, so some of them are in Castle, others are still at home. So there was just, you know, it was wild. It was absolutely wild. I don't even know how the teams that were running those calls managed, again, because we were also working across time zones, across languages. And so the calls would go on for hours. You know, so those were really just an experience. I think you just needed to have been there because it was really hectic. Within the Lumbung, I think it's necessary to say we were also divided into smaller groups that were called mini majlises, because now the gathering of everybody together that was beautiful and chaotic and wild, that was called a majlis. And that's when everybody just kind of comes together to kind of talk about where they are and how things are going for them. And are you having problems applying for visas? Because again, when you're dealing with a group of people in the global south trying to go to the global north, there's always going to be a conversation about visas, as there should be, because the visa processes are ridiculous and the nation state is a stupid infrastructure. That being said, as regards the mini majlises, for us, we were in a mini majlis with some really lovely collectives, and one of the things that we had wanted to do was to do an event together during the opening week, and we planned it for months, literally, because we had meetings again across time zones, because you have to find a time that works for everybody, which, as you can imagine, is hectic. Then we also had to find a thing that works within our strengths. And that part of the kind of Lumbung exercise was being given a smaller budget to kind of do a thing, all of you together, and kind of having the conversation about what that would entail, how do all of us agree. All of that was really an exercise in togetherness that really had to take into account many elements of our different diversities. We were not, unfortunately, able to host the event that we would have wanted to, because around the time when we wanted to do it, Castle started experiencing, I don't even know what wave we are on of COVID. It's like an nth wave, an Xth wave, 17th, 28th wave of COVID. And so there was a lot more conversations about being responsible when you're gathering people outside, people starting to go back into wearing masks. It then became very confusing, even though there had been a lot of hope around this event that with people having a little bit more access to vaccines in the ways in which they could and what have you, there would be a little more kind of getting together in public, even though a lot of people obviously and necessarily were still wearing masks. And there was also a lot of conversations around responsible care for the people who are not necessarily able to attend because maybe, you're immune compromised or you're dealing with conditions that don't allow you to be in public in those ways. And so unfortunately, we were not able to have the event that we wanted to, which was going to be in a large public square, where we have like food and a bar going on the side. I think we were in charge of the bar. That's not commentary on our lives. We just ended up in charge of the bar. And there was going to be like public games and music and DJs and general fun. And we called our gig Chasing the Sunset, because what we wanted to be was the kind of fast stopover for people to kind of just come and enjoy themselves before they go out into the rest of the city of Castle to either kind of engage with some of the installations that were going on into the night, attend different artist talks, go out for dinner or whatever. And so we really wanted to be this place where you come and wind down from a long day and start really enjoying yourself in the same way that a happy person would, a happy child would, to then just kind of enjoy and then now step off into the rest of your evening. So we weren't really able to have that event, even though we planned it for really long. And the planning of it for us was a really, extensive and many times challenging, but generally beautiful experience in being able to do things together with people that you don't necessarily know, but you're getting to know slowly during these intense calls, and then also kind of catching up over emails as well. So we are there with multiple streams of emails. One is a production stream, one is a communication stream, one is the mini majlis stream. And so also people shouldn't underestimate the amount of admin that went into us being able to do this work. I can't even imagine what Wajukuu's admin was like, especially as members of the kind of Lumbung subgroup that was kind of guiding everybody else in teaching how Lumbung works as a concept. So even for us, like we thought ours was bad. I can't imagine what theirs was like. But yeah, maybe that's what I can say about the Lumbung engagement.
And yeah, thank you so much for mentioning the majlis and the idea of the mini majlises, because I think zooming out more than one person in this group, in the audience, I am really interested in what work spoke to you, because your work is, both of your collectives had really, grand ideas that resonate with so many people across the globe. And so I'm curious about which ideas from, as you were saying, a Documenta that had quite a large representation from the global south, which work stood out to you. And in relation to that, Eric Manya has a question for Wajukuu about whether there is any other Kenyan artistic practice or value that the curators, organizers, or other artists learned from you. So, you know, that's a bit of a too far. So I'll say it again. Which other work stood out to you, you know, that you're still thinking about, your maybe some ideas you're wrestling with, some work which just was maybe visually or intellectually or in whatever way outstanding to you, but also like which values and practices you think you took to the world, you know, which is Eric's question. Maybe you could start with you, Googs and Shab.
Yeah, so for us as a collective, I think one value that really got support and voice from the curatorial team was we really didn't want to change and fit in the approach of technicality of Documenta stage, because we couldn't do what we did if really we were to follow like other things which we fought a lot to execute our work. That being there, you know, there was this thing of fear, like a lot of things there are approached with fear and the like safety thing in approaching an artwork. It really preempted our creation, and we approached the curatorial team and talked with them, because the production team was really concerned with, like I was saying before, with how we are building a house there, you know. And we said, we know how to build, don't doubt what we are doing. And we had 2 meetings, I think, with 2 different companies, which were to build a tunnel for us. And we really didn't agree with it, you know, like, despite like we are hosted, you know, we kind of had to speak and say, no, we have our way. Why can't we do it our way? And the curatorial team stood with us and bought our idea, let them do it their way. I think that's one thing, they believed in us, and also the outcome of it was really like something really, really strong.
So one of the Lumbuk values is generosity, and we were in the same space with the Bruto Art Trust, which are from Bangladesh, and they built a community kitchen where people could come cook their own food from where they come from, either from Mali, or Kenyan, or German, or whatever, and they could share with everyone, and not only food, but stories, music, and so on. And these, for us, we really liked it, and it's something we could bring to our community, whereby we can build like not really a soup kitchen, but a kitchen in the community where we could be providing food to the community. They cook, given to the economic situation we are in right now, and we work with the vulnerable communities. This is something we would really like to bring forward to our community.
As a form of sharing, you know, like we were thinking like, okay, this is a value also, it's a value we have, but we learn something from another collective where we can have a shared kitchen community, and anyone can come and cook for those, you know. For example, we do workshops here with kids, And we know these kids, the families they come from. Their parents would come here to get some food. But if we have a community kitchen and anyone is welcome to cook something for the community, people who sleep without something, this will be one way of sharing with them, you know, rather than having a place where we assume we are solving everything, but small things within the community are not catered for. I think this is a value which, from our collective point of view, we want to approach, and we welcome everyone to join in.
To be part of Lombok. This is one way to expand Lombok.
I can say definitely two things were inspiring for us. One, it's just going to sound like I'm fanning, but honestly, Wajukuu's work was stunning. We really loved how they were able to combine the general experience of the building, and when they say like it stood, there were no issues as regards safety. So they were right when they say they know how to build houses. And that there were really lovely ways it was letting in light. And then also the installations within that were made by all the different artists, together with the visual art on the wall, things that were kind of blurring the lines between sculpture and installation, stunning work. So definitely we really loved their installation. I think we went back more than once to just kind of take it in and enjoy it. Also because in the middle of Castle, it was a little piece of home. And so definitely there was that. I also want to say that the infrastructure around, I don't want to talk about another piece per se, but I want to talk about the infrastructure around Documenta. One of the things that was really, really touching for us was the ways in which the festival asks for people to volunteer to come and guide the public through the festival. Again, remember that Documenta is a festival of public art and publicly installed art pieces, which can be a little bit dense. Again, there was a lot of contextual information that people needed. And so this group of people of all demographics, many were young, some were a little bit older, were all really, especially at the beginning of the festival, were walking around talking to all of the artists in all of the installations, trying to understand what the thing was about, so that then when people who've bought tickets to come and attend come, they're guided through different installations by a guide who knows exactly what's going on, who's able to explain without necessarily using the kind of talk that artists are known for, or even the kind of talk that the festival themselves have used to describe the art piece on the little board on the side. They're just talking about the art like people to other people in really lovely ways. And there are many ways sometimes in which the public feel separated from art. They feel, they worry that they may not be able to say the right thing around it. They worry that, they might feel a little bit like that's artists for artists, that sort of thing. But then a lot of the art was really speaking very deeply and in very grounded ways to real kind of human issues being faced in multiple countries across the world. And the use of the guides especially was really, really key in bridging the knowledge gaps that people might have had because they might have limited exposure. They don't necessarily engage with work from, South Asia or work from Africa or wherever. And then the guide, because, they've talked to the artists, they've read, the catalog, they might know something a little bit extra. They're able to explain all of this in context in ways that are quite kind, that then allow the public to have much stronger understandings of what's going on. So that definitely was a thing that was really inspiring for us, seeing that part of the engagement. You don't just throw art, into the public and people clap and go home. But then people are like engaging, they're asking questions. They want to know like what are the different pieces saying? Why are they saying X and Y and Z? And that kind of deep conversation between artists and participating active audiences is always really beautiful.
Very interesting question that's been posed, which is, what do you imagine a Documenta in the Global South would look like? Because I think a huge part of this conversation so far has been framing this realistically as something that is coming from here to there. That's why I was saying, it feels like the empire is speaking back and all of those things. But what will it look like if this is a thought exercise, but it might not be a thought exercise, what do we know about what the future holds? Who amongst us foresaw the last 5 years? Either of you could go first, but I just want us to think together about what a Documenta in the Global South could possibly look like.
I think maybe for me, what I can say is that because our public spaces are so deeply politicized, because the idea of crowds in the Global South is already a political quantity that becomes dangerous to whatever nation state engagement is. One of the reasons that you can hold something like Documenta in a town like Castle is because Castle is a small town. The people themselves there are not many. But then we come from Nairobi has 6 million people right now. Lagos is a city of 21 million, right? So when you put a piece in the middle of all these people and the public are engaging deeply, it immediately becomes a political question. I think it leaves the artistic realm and really crosses. And so there's definitely that. I think there's been a lot of work put in by successive governments, not just Kenyan governments, but governments across the South, to kind of limit the ways in which people think they can own public space, or people think they can engage with public space. And that a lot of the work, a Documenta makes very strong political statements, a lot of which are critical, a lot of which are saying things that are not convenient to say, and that we're not doing people are not doing pretty pieces that are nice for tourists to see, right? And so now when you tie together, right, are people who've already been told that them gathering in public is problematic unless it's a campaign, right? And then all these pieces that are saying, this is the Documenta piece, so stunning. The Wajukuu piece, so beautiful. And this is the tunnel that was entering the kind of hall where they had the wider exhibition of many more of their works. But yeah, back to what I was saying, that for us, there's many other things we would have to think about as regards what a Documenta here would look like. I think even just a basic thing like the public in Castle needed to know, if they're coming to Documenta, where are the public toilets that they can go to. And so some people had kind of installed public toilets in different places. We live in a city where there's been a lot of work put in to make sure that every time you go to a toilet, you're paying someone. You're either entering a cafe to use their toilet, or there's two, public toilets that are functioning and working, and you still have to pay the government to use those. And so things like that would definitely have to be taken into account, I think. And that again, even the public spaces that are available for people to install in Castle, there was like a lot of different options. And again, like we had said before, we were installing in parks. How many public parks do Kenyans have, right? How many public parks are there in cities in the Global South? Because also the places where our cities are developmentally are about people really kind of getting every square of land to use. So like for me, I have wider questions about the politics of a Documenta here, the ways in which it would be politically threatening. And especially because, again, there's also been a lot of work to kind of turn artists into people who should just be delivering entertainment and not necessarily critical thought, not necessarily deep conversations about the futures that we want to build together. That has been made the province of the politician. The politician is the only one who gets to dream and write a manifesto about what the future looks like. And when the artist does it, it becomes deeply problematic in many ways. So I mean, I would feel like it would force the artists into a place where they would have to meet direct kind of political pushback. And not just in Kenya, in many places across the South, and that also it would need to be a dignified experience for the public. And I doubt, because of the kinds of infrastructures we have, it can be difficult. This is not to say that festivals here don't work. They do. The Wajukuu Festival is fantastic. People have been having all sorts of gatherings, but when I'm talking about a Documenta here, I'm thinking in terms of scale, I'm thinking in terms of financing, and I'm definitely thinking in terms of what is the experience for the public in attending a thing like this. And already, if our movement in our own cities is already so difficult, there are some people who can't move in the city without being treated like they're suspicious. So how are they then supposed to say, I'm going to, attend an arts fair, right? When like there are kids who leave their house and they don't get home because they crossed the police at some point. So I just, wanted to say that as well. And this is not to say these problems are not in Castle. There are problems in Castle, but this is not the forum for discussing them.
Not forgetting what Njoki have said, but we have a festival she has mentioned, and with the right partners, the right people, we can turn it into a big thing. When we talk about a huge art event or a big festival, what do we compare it with? If we don't compare it with anything, it is big on its own. So we just need people. Right now we have, I hear there's a Nairobi festival. What is it about? Who are the people and what's happening? So if we know, or if we have the right people or the right activity, it may turn into a big thing. Pole pole, step by step.
I think coming to question on what if we host a documentary, I think first I think it would really like face censorship a lot, because one thing, our art haven't been given a voice that it needs in a society here in Kenya. And another thing, when we say art, we normally actually don't know who we are talking about, and the art we are doing, who are we doing it for? And our government haven't reached a point where they take art spaces as serious spaces, or art as a tool also to shape our society and how we can solve things which we face. So as Goog said, we will be having like Nairobi Festival. I'm really curious to know this festival, what will be in this festival? What will it be? Because most spaces, you don't have a big room to question things or to ask for policy to be changed, because we don't have spaces. We don't have art institution. We even don't have a room where we meet. Like, for example, I'm from in Kenyan content, I'm from the East, like East Lando, In most cases, I'm taking my artwork outside. We haven't created a room where we can kill these boundaries. And it's the same thing, I think, I saw in Documenta. That's why you felt there was some element of censorship, because what was brought, it's like you are given a space, but you are limited to what you can question in that space. And I expect that to happen here in Kenya if we happen to host Documenta.
I think maybe just to kind of echo what Shabu was saying. In fact, when he said censorship, immediately my thoughts went to, for instance, the Kenya Film Classification Board and the ways in which they want to tell people what is proper for the public to see and what is not proper for the public to see. So can you imagine, all these artists having to submit their work to some sort of classification board to make sure that it's appropriate for public viewing, right? There's definitely questions around that. That would need to be engaged with. And Shabu is also right when he says that in general, spaces for the arts are few. Those few spaces don't offer you a lot of skills. So even the thing that you might want to do and the size at which you would want to do it is already deeply contained. And then B, there's intention around limiting those few spaces to certain parts of the city, which then now creates issues for people who are trying to move between in the city, crossing like that. Again, this assumes that we would be hosting something like this in Nairobi. Kassel, relatively in Germany, is a much smaller town than, for instance, Frankfurt or Berlin, which are much more kind of metropolitan and much more fast-paced. So Kassel is a small town, and so it would be like the equivalent of hosting Documenta in like Thika, or some of these slightly smaller towns that are a little bit farther out of the way. And so those would now start, again, we come back to politics when we say, how would people travel there? Where would people be staying? What would the experience be when they're engaging with these spaces? And maybe to just kind of revisit the censorship conversation, just a few weeks ago, it was, the Ugandan Music Festival was being discussed, as a societal interrupter in their parliament, right? And these are kids who are, and people from all over the world kind of, but again, convened at the core by Ugandan young people gathering to just enjoy themselves. And the only thing that the parliament was able to see, right, was drugs, was bad behavior. They were really interested in cancelling it. And then the reason that they didn't cancel it was not for the Ugandans. They said it's because they're foreigners coming, right? Which then goes back to this nonsense that Africans have internalized, again, because of colonialism, about the visitor getting the better plate. And that makes you a better person because you've given the visitor a better thing. And so the fact that this festival was only allowed to proceed because there were foreign visitors coming who had bought tickets, not because of the Ugandans, not because of the people who've been generating and kind of building the festival for years and years, and that right now, is where it's really gotten to a place where things can really change. But when the parliament are discussing it, they're not discussing it from a place that honors it, that honors its artists, that honors the growth and the enterprise and the creativity and the far-seeingness of Ugandan young people to see that a small town is a place where we can gather people to come from everywhere to just kind of come and enjoy, DJ performances, live music performances, house music, Ugandan food, engaging with other Africans from all sorts of places, engaging with people from outside. And then you see how that then gets represented in the political sphere. And so when we talk about censorship, it's not a small thing. When you talk about people actively trying to limit what artists are doing and kind of trying to misrepresent and mislabel what artists are doing, that's exactly what we mean. So and then also like, as regards even the Kassel federal government vis-a-vis the national government in Germany, who finance Documenta, when we start thinking about which global south government will finance maybe Colombia now, maybe, right? But tricks. I don't know where Nyambura is, but maybe what we can do as we wait for them to come back is kind of talk about some of the questions that are coming up in the chat box. And there's somebody who asks, what do we mean when we refer to a dignified experience for the public? Which publics? Thanks, Dawn, for that question. I mean, I can answer, and it would really be great also to hear what Goethe and Shabu say. I think for me, people need to be sure that they're welcome. That's where we start. And especially in the context of the Global South, people need to be sure they're welcome. They can't enter the space having doubts that, oh, I have to have dressed a certain way to come here. I need to look a certain way. I need to be able to talk a certain way in order to come here. People need to feel like they're welcome. And that, again, in a city that's stratified the way that ours is, that can become really tricky. I definitely think that it's things like accessibility. And so are people who, you know, are living with different types of disability able to engage with the pieces as well? So what infrastructure has been put to enable people moving around with crutches, moving around with walking sticks, moving around with wheelchairs, people with impaired vision, people with impaired hearing, to kind of engage with the works. And I think definitely for us, for instance, our films, that's the reason they were captioned and or subtitled, right? So that it's not that you have to hear what the person is saying, you can also just kind of read on the screen what's going on. And again, also language access is definitely a thing. So you're moving into a place where people don't necessarily all speak English or all prefer English as their primary language of engagement. And so there was definitely German subtitles in the work that we did. And that Documenta themselves had also many long conversations around what works are accessible, making sure that that was happening, things like that. So like now, for instance, if you're going to have an art exhibition in a place that has stairs, which then means that there's some people who would be able to climb to the top to see them, right? Again, in a context like ours, where some work would be sensitive for people with certain kinds of things, maybe it's children that you don't necessarily want to enter into certain spaces, then you arrange the things such that there's a space that children can go to, and then there are spaces where there's warnings. It's like if you have children, you know, you may not necessarily want to let them come in alone, or if you're coming in with children, they have to come in with an accompanying adult who explains what's going on. Also this thing of guides, you know, these sorts of things that then allow people to start feeling like they are wanted in a space, that their presence is honored, that they're able to enter and engage as their authentic selves without building barriers to entry. So I think that for me is what dignified means. I don't know what Ngugi and Shabu would say.
Yeah, I think you've covered it all. It's all about how to access everything at ease without encountering any challenges, be it security or movement where you walk, everything.
There's a statement here from Wangoi Wakamoji, who says, I love this thought question and the imagination it invites for what the potential might be for a public exhibition in a Kenyan town of large scale, even if not Documenta scale. That is critical and hopeful. Thank you so much, Wangoi, for sharing that thought. It's true. It's critical. I really love what Wajukuu said about we already have existing festivals. We can expand what we have. So we don't need to think in terms of installing, like parachuting an entire Documenta here. When we have things that are going on here, that what they need is sustainable resourcing, not just 1 year, then the thing, you know, the thing happens once, but then definitely our own things can grow. Judica says, I experienced two sides of Documenta. The actually on-site experience that was very different from what was going on in the media. How much are you impacted by the negative parts that were going on in the media? I don't know, maybe Ngugi and Shabu had already kind of talked about this as regards the experience of censorship, but then maybe there's something else that they want to say.
I think for us, because we went there like 2 months before, even 3 months before the event was open to the public, because we did our work on site. And I think we really had a good experience. with the Lumbung community, doing cooking dinners together, inviting other collective to our homes and so on. But we didn't allow the negative side of it to really kill our spirit. What we did, we just somehow went silent because what was happening there, really, we were in solidarity with the other collective. But for me, I felt our voice or our stories were denied that platform by the political part of what was happening there. So that's the only thing I feel. But there was a society out there, and there was art society supporting it. And that's why I think even now we really get a lot of feedback from people from other artists and also art spaces. They were really moved by what we did there. So the negative part of it, because it has nothing to do with the reality on the ground, really didn't affect us that much. We know it's politics, and we just observe it as it passes.
I really want to say that I love what Shabu said about the people who you're in solidarity with already know that you're in solidarity with them, and that those conversations are definitely going on. We also, even though we were guests, we went to places where people were cooking, and that was really, it was really a lovely experience. There was a lot of intention by different artist collectives from all over the world to kind of connect with each other, to have deep conversations about what building together means for different people. I think those are actually the things that are not necessarily in the media. Those kind of very, very heart-to-heart things. It was very easy to kind of focus on inflammatory moments that were misrepresented, just miss everything, and then just say that this is what the experience was for everybody. That's not necessarily what was going on the ground. There was a lot of there's a lot of deep engagement among the artists, and that also it kind of brings to the fore that media generally have a problem with reporting collective art making. Media is used to engaging with a single solitary artist and then kind of building everything around them and then assuming that this artist did everything alone. So now when you come to a place where, first of all, everybody's building together, so people came in groups, then there was a lot of collaboration with the Documenta team as regards how the thing is going to come, and that even people are having much deeper conversations around even how do you credit work, right? That then has so many people contributing to it. Like when you sit at the end of a movie and you watch pages and pages and pages of credits rolling, but then when people talk about the movie, the one name you remember is the director. How fair is that as regards understanding the depth and layers of work that go into kind of putting together something, especially the larger it becomes? And so those are conversations, I think, that also has left media beyond kind of chasing headlines and chasing quick quotes that may not necessarily capture the context of what a very complex situation can be. Also, the representation of the art, the representation of the artist holding space, like Shabu said, for the stories, the different, relevant, beautiful stories that everybody came with, was also a place that they could have done a lot of learning from.
Thank you so much for that. And yes, I'm back. So I'm like a jack in the box. Right. So as we wrap this up, I'd like to ask both of the collectives one question, provocative question. If you were to have one person from Kenyan art history join your collective going forward, who would that be? A, and B, please share, your last words for the audience. And Joki, we'll start with you because you keep smiling.
Oh, no. I know. This one I need time.
Googs, Shabu, go for it.
Yeah, I think for us, As much as I can remember, going back to when we started our collective, who I would like to bring to it, I think we are a community, we are a family. You know, those who are there with us when we started, they are still with us. So we feel like no one ever left. We don't have to go back looking for someone. Everyone is with us, and we walk the journey together. And I saw some of them in the audience, and I really appreciate. So there are people who have worked with us since we were young in art and also young with age, but they're still with us. So we never lose. We haven't lost anyone. We are packed.
Yeah, and we thank them for sharing with us their skill, and we hope to share with others. And your last question is, I would like to say we want to ask everyone or invite everyone to Lombard to push forward the idea of sharing and being a community, because this is what Wajukuu is built on, and we are inviting other people. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for that, Jockey. You can't escape. It's your turn now.
I think maybe will you allow me to just kind of answer this question that Tana has asked in the chat about what we think it would take to amplify the message behind our art, so that everyday people are encouraged to take a proactive approach in challenging harmful policies around secondhand clothes. I think, like, for us, especially the way we framed our message, the main issue began at source, because it's not Africans who, you know, are dumping these clothes necessarily. There's definitely conversations we can have here at home about waste management, which again is a political gap that has been ignored for decades, which is again why we have the kinds of conversations that we have. So I think for us here, we're not necessarily interested in like faulting us here at home around these things. There's a lot of work, political work that has gone in over decades to limit the possibilities of people who want to start businesses, to curtail the growth, for instance, of cotton industries, silk industries, which then makes us making our own clothes very problematic for no reason. And at the same time, it becomes a lot easier for the secondhand clothes to enter our market. So when we start having, you know, conversations at that level, this is like a political size conversation, and that we then have to answer it from different places. At home, we have one conversation. Definitely in the global north, they would be having a different conversation. I think in general, what I would say is that politicians need to be a little bit more afraid of publics in general, and this is what I would say anywhere, whether I'm in the global north or here at home. Politicians are not afraid enough. I don't think they realize that there are actually methods for sending them home. There are actually methods that we're supposed to use to keep them accountable. And that for us here, I think having conversations about why it becomes so difficult to engage politically is a place for us to begin. I think in the global north, it's a little easier to reach a politician. Chances are you're on the same train with them. You know, their chances are they're hosting an event where you'll probably have access to and you can go. Here, it's a lot more difficult. So for people to be able to work communally, to start shifting political conversation, takes different things in different contexts. And like, we have to begin by being honest and gentle with publics about what is holding them back, and not blaming the publics, because a lot of work goes into curtailing their access to these types of conversations. So it's not a clean or easy answer. But the thing around people being more proactive, it's easier to be proactive in community. So how do we start to form communities that engage deeply, I think would be the question that answers your question. The minute we form communities that engage deeply is when we can start making stronger political statements and pushing people to do more of what we want and less of whatever it is they're doing. As regards what the question you asked about a historical Kenya. Me, first of all, I really love Wajukuu's answer, which was that they're inviting the public to come. It's the best answer. I mean, for us, you know, our art takes us away from fine art. A lot of our work has been digital before this, and then before we started doing more installation work. And so we do have like a place where we really stand fine artists. We really love, for instance, the work of Magdalene Odundo, who's a potter, sculptor, and ceramicist. She's a Kenyan artist. We also really love like people who just, their stories would be incredible. One of the things that we really wanted to do at some point was to engage with the story of Orienrogo Manduli and how she, you know, placed in the Kenyan Safari Rally. Those are the types of stories that we really enjoy and love. So obviously, if she was in the collective, then it wouldn't be that hard to tell her story, you know. So things like that, just as fun answers. But I think for us, we'd probably need 3 weeks to come up with a list, which you would then now have to start shortlisting, and then start fighting over who we would want. Why can't we have all of them, etc. I think that's really what it is, that our answer would actually be a list.
And on that note, I think that one of the biggest things that has emerged for me from this conversation is this idea of working in community, thinking in community, making change in community, the power of communities over and above, you know, just the notion of a collective, which could be 10 artists or 20 artists, thinking broadly and on a societal level. And it's a great place for us to end this conversation. Thank you so much, and the work that went into what you took as our representative. By our here, I mean Kenyans, regardless of what we may feel about the nation state. I want to thank everybody in the audience for your time, your great questions, your engagement. I especially want to thank the Goethe-Institut for organizing this conversation. I want to thank in absentia, but not so much in absentia, all the people who made Documenta 15 possible for, you know, leading us to this point and to this conversation. My name is Mbura Mutani. I really, really enjoyed being part of this conversation, including the hitilafus and mitambo that meant I dipped in and out of the conversations at various points. This is what it means to live in the global south. And thank you, everyone, and have a good night or day or rest of your day, wherever you are. Bye.